Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our monthly webinar. I really appreciate you all joining and taking the time to learn a little bit more about cybersecurity this month. I did want to introduce our guest speakers for tonight. I have two students who are joining us. They are incredible. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. But Ashwath and Ananya have been working with Fairfax County and our Silver Shield Committee, and they have done this presentation a couple times, and we're really excited to bring this to you. So I'm going to turn it over to them for them to introduce themselves, and I hope you learn a lot about cybersecurity. Oh, and don't forget, you can always put the information or questions in the comment section, and we'll do our best during the presentation to answer them.
Thank you for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. We hope you're all doing well, and we thank you for taking the time to attend our presentation today. My name is Ashwath Karnakaram, and I'm a 12th grader at Westfield High School. I have participated in CyberPatriot over the past 3 years, and I'm certified by the SANS for Foundational Cybersecurity through the CyberStart America program.
My name is Ananya Karunakaram, and I'm a 10th grader at Westfield High School. I have also participated in CyberPatriot over the past year and have been interested in cybersecurity since. I have also been taking courses like computer science and certifications to increase my knowledge as well.
We have the Tech Caregiver certification from the Air Force Association sponsored CyberPatriot and AT&T, and we want to use those skills we learned to help the community against cyber threats.
We were inspired to create this workshop because there were several cybercrimes occurring in the United States, and a significant amount of cyber attacks were occurring to elder citizens. So we wanted to create an initiative that would help lower the cyber attacks occurring to elder citizens.
As we realized cybercrimes are increasing, we decided to create workshops to educate these basic cybersecurity principles to senior citizens, and we wanted our elderly citizens to feel safer in cyberspace and to be aware of the several avenues of cyber attacks that can be used and its prevention strategies. We would first like to tell you a little bit about how we have structured our course material. We are incorporating content from CyberPatriot and Tech Caregiver presentations, and we are also adding some original material as well. After receiving our certifications, we were provided with Air Force-sponsored CyberPatriot material that was well-reviewed and crafted by professionals.
Our initiative is called CyberGrip. The GRIP represents the 4 basic cybersecurity principles: govern, respond, inform, and protect. Govern represents controlling your cyber life. Respond represents responding properly to cyber threats. Informed means being informed of cyber threats on the internet and taking protective measures. And finally, protect means being protected on the internet.
Through our workshops, we hope to make people cyber fit, and we want to help people to get a grip on their cyber life. So we have 5 main modules: Introduction to Cybersecurity, Common Internet Threats, Internet Scams and Fraud, Social Media Safety, and Password Management. At the end of this workshop, there will be a short form which we kindly request you to fill out. Throughout this workshop, we will also have interactive sessions, so we request you to please participate in those. We will now begin our presentation with Lesson 1, an introduction to cybersecurity. Let's start with a quick simulation. We have a house and the door is unlocked. A robber easily comes in.
Now imagine we put a lock on the door, but the robber just breaks the window and enters the house. A little more work for the robber, but still doable. As you can see, there will always be a way for the robber to enter the house. It is impossible for a security system to guarantee protection. But how is all of this relevant to cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity is all about preventing technology hacks. One key theme to consider is that As our own security systems becomes better, hackers will also become better. Because of this, there is no foolproof defense system to prevent hacks, but what we can do is make it harder for hackers to penetrate our security systems. So, who here uses their devices in public places? Okay, so I'll move on. So, um, so now, even though there may be no expert hackers in public places generally, your data will still be at risk. So a person with malicious intentions and no technical expertise can easily look over your shoulder to see any credentials or PII, which we'll talk about, you might type. This is called shoulder surfing. Please make sure to always be cautious in public places when you use your device. Yes, that is correct. It is generally not recommended to use public Wi-Fi in public places because that Wi-Fi will generally be more susceptible to hacks. And we'll be covering more information on how to prevent using public Wi-Fi further on in this workshop. In addition to shoulder surfing, dumpster diving is also another way to access your data. When disposing of your computers, make sure to reset it factory settings to wipe out all of your data. Even papers such as receipts can be helpful for the hacker, so make sure to shred all paper containing your PII. So this is a pretty good graphic on the main types of PII, or personally identifiable information. So we have driver's license, credit card number, geographic location. This can definitely be used by hackers to get access to your information. So make sure you're always cautious about giving such information out. So now let's cover web browsers at a high level. So web browsers are key in navigating information on the World Wide Web. So always make sure to use reputable web browsers, as they are generally more concerned about user privacy and data and will give more updates. Thinking about this from a company's point of view, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, Google Chrome, Safari, those are all really reputable companies and softwares. Um, so they're generally more concerned about their own users because they don't want their reputation to get damaged in any way. So it is always recommended to use such reputed web browsers. Now, part of using the internet are ads. Ads are a pretty major part of browsing the internet. But has anyone ever noticed how your ads are often related to things you're interested in? Your web browser and web history and cookies are key in showing ads what you are interested in. So how would you prevent this? For example, yesterday I was shopping for shoes, and when I went onto YouTube, I saw an advertisement right before a video um, advertising shoes. So it's not really a coincidence. They are getting information from your browser history and your cookies to determine what type of ads are most relevant to you. And there is a pretty solid way to prevent this. Incognito is a feature of most browsers, and they temporarily record your information. However, after you close this window, those preferences will be cleared, and so your data will be less compromised. So while you're still in the incognito window, if you shop for shoes, that data is still recorded. And if you go onto YouTube in that same incognito window, you might still see an advertisement for shoes. But after you close that incognito window, those cookies and the history will not be stored permanently, and you'll be able to access the internet on a normal window without advertisements that are suspiciously close to your interests. So here are some other tips on using a web browser. Some key things to point out are that even though there is a padlock icon and it says HTTPS, this merely means that the connection is secure, but it does not mean that the website is safe. So all websites are have an underlying connection, and the HTTPS means that that connection is secure, but it does not mean that the web content is safe. So just always make sure that even with the HTTPS and the padlock, make sure that the website you're accessing is something you want to access and it will not jeopardize your data in any way. So now let's talk about mobile devices at a higher level now. So mobile devices, I think everyone here knows about what mobile devices are. Smartphones, tablets, smartwatches. Pretty much there's a lot of mobile devices that's used by everyone nowadays. Here are some general guidelines to secure your devices. One key thing is to always make sure your software is updated so vulnerabilities are prevented. Tying this back to our web browsers, all these reputable companies like Apple and Google Chrome, they all want their users to feel safe when using their devices and their products. So they're more likely to release updates and release security fixes. So always make sure that your update is up to date. Other tips include deleting unnecessary apps. Unnecessary apps might still collect your information in the background, so it's always better to delete the app if you don't use it. And tying this back to the comment of public Wi-Fi, it is generally recommended to disable Wi-Fi and Bluetooth when not in use, especially in public places, because hackers generally get data through public Wi-Fi in public places. Using strong passwords to lock devices is also very key in protecting your device. And that's really the primary point. Like when it comes to protecting your device, I think that's the first thing everyone will think of. So make sure you have a strong password, and we'll be going over strong password tips later on in this presentation. Now, one really important thing is to always log out of social media when you're finished using it, because even though there might not be many examples, there's definitely like all social media platforms are susceptible to hacks. So just make sure you always log out of social media when you're done using it. So cybercrime is becoming more frequent, but these are some things that we can do to prevent cybercrime at our side. So securing our data is first in our hands, and these tips in our introduction module are all beneficial in securing data on your side. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, let's take a short quiz now. So question 1, what is not an example of PII? That is correct. Name a favorite book is not an example. How do you log out of YouTube? So logging out of YouTube is basically just logging out of your email account, because Google is connected to YouTube. So when you sign into Google or your Gmail account, then you'll be signing into YouTube effectively. So when you log out of YouTube, it's better to log out of your Gmail account. That's how you log out of YouTube. Yeah.
Just getting more technical with it, like on the top right corner of YouTube, you usually see your Gmail icon. Just click on that, and if you scroll down, you'd see a sign up button. You can just press that to sign up.
Yeah, I think the general answer is C. That is correct. Name a favorite book. That's great. Question 2. What is a feature of web browsers? A is symbol near URL that guarantees website safety and security. B is incognito that temporarily stores cookies but clears after the window is closed. C is updates your computer software as well as the browser software. Yeah, B is the correct answer. Incognito temporarily stores cookies but clears after window is closed. So A is wrong because the symbol near the URL that guarantees website safety and security, there's no symbol or no indicator that the website is completely safe. That padlock icon just merely means that the connection is secure, that the technical underlying connection is secure, which does not guarantee website safety. And C is wrong because the browser generally does not have any access to the actual computer software other than maybe microphone and camera. So it will not be able to update your computer software. That is part of your computer. And in order to update your computer software, you will have to go to the settings on your computer. Yeah, so I think the general answer is B, which is great. Third question, it's a true or false. There's no physical method for people gaining access to your PII. False is correct, and dumpster diving is an example of a physical method for people gaining access to your PII. So that's the right answer. False is the right answer. Another physical method for other people gaining access to your PII is shoulder surfing. So always make sure you are aware of whoever's around you whenever you're using a computer or whenever you're disposing a computer or receipts or papers. Always make sure to shred them and properly dispose of them. So we have now finished Module 1, and we will now begin with Module 2.
We will now begin with Module 2, Common Internet Threats. Next slide. The only truly secure system is one that is powered off, cast in a block of concrete, and sealed in a lead-lined room with armed guards. This is a quote that represents a lot of this module. Unless your computer is powered off, with no external connections, there will always be a way for someone to hack your device. In this section, you will learn about the various threats seen on the internet, including malware, spam, emails, calls, texts, and the different kinds of social engineering. More importantly, you will learn easy to remember tips on how to avoid these common threats. So, does anyone know what malware is?
Before that, we have a quick question in the chat. What about prescription bottles? So yes, there is a lot of PII on prescription bottles, and normally there will be like a tag that will be given on this prescription bottles. So ripping them out and shredding those bottles or shredding the tags would be good.
Yeah.
And garbage disposal is also recommended for that.
That's right. Yeah. So back to the question. So does anyone know what malware is? So it's basically intending to do harm. And so malicious means intending to do harm, and software is defined as any computer program. This means that malware is any software that intends to do harm. So pretty self-explanatory. So for example, malware could steal information, spy on users, and or gain dominance over computers. You can't have malware programmed on your computer and be cyber safe, so let's make sure you avoid any malicious softwares. So it is important to know the different types of malware so you can avoid them in the future. The first and most common type of malware is called viruses. Viruses spread malware from one computer to another with human assistance and are generally very harmful to the system. Malware that spreads from computer to computer without human assistance are called worms. Worms often tend to replicate on its own over and over again, thereby slowing down the computer. Trojan Horse is a program with a hidden malicious function. An example of Trojan Horse is when you download a seemingly legitimate program, but as you run the application, there would be malicious background tasks. Other malware types include adware, spyware, and ransomware. Like their names, adware presents unwanted ads on your computer, like we discussed in the previous module. Spyware collects your PII without your knowledge, and ransomware temporarily holds and locks your files until money is given to the hacker. Furthermore, browser hijackers can change your browsers, such as Chrome, Internet Explorer, and Edge without your permission. Zombie allows hackers anywhere around the world to control your device. Finally, rogue softwares are disguised as legitimate softwares to trick you. As you can see, there are several malicious softwares, therefore, it is important to know what approach you take to prevent these malicious softwares from happening to you. So now that we have covered the most popular types of malwares, let's see how they spread. The internet is the most popular way, of course, malware can travel. Through websites, online media downloads, free software downloads, and email attachments. In order to prevent this medium of malware, always be cautious of attachments. Make sure you are fully aware of what you are clicking before you click anything. There are also physical methods of downloading malware on your computer, such as USBs or CDs. Always make sure you know where your device is and be aware of any unfamiliar attachments to your device, like a USB. So now we will be talking about social engineering. Social engineering is a type of scam where the scammer generally preys on your emotions to get you to do rash actions that may benefit the scammer. An example of this is a ransomware. So basically, the hacker may get you to do a task that basically preys on your emotions, and this is also a form of ransomware. We will go more in depth about the various scams in the next module. For now, let's talk about some possible actions of hackers. Phishing is a very popular way hackers use to spread malware. This is generally done through sending a link or attachment via email. To avoid being a victim of phishing, always check the sender email. Chances are the sender will have a very similar email to an email that is familiar to you, but there's always a difference that you always have to check. Other ways are to make sure the email is official. If there are any spelling errors, numerous recipients, low resolution images, the email and its content may be false.
Yeah, so just to jump in a little bit over here, the image you see on the slide is a attempt at a fake email. So this is like a attempt at a phishing attempt. So you can see that the email is really close to what an official email might look like, but there are some small discrepancies that people maybe in their busy daily work might not take the time to notice. So always make sure that first and most importantly, the sender's email is accurate and there are no like sketchy and like low resolution images in the email.
Yeah. So smishing is also a close relative of phishing, except smishing is done through text messages with unfamiliar senders. These messages may claim that an account is closed or that you have won a lottery. In these cases, it is best not to click on links and not to respond. Report the number to 7726 spam. So, for example, on the slide, it has a text message to the person from a Wells Fargo update, and it basically says that your account has been suspended. So make sure to check where the message is from and don't respond to it if you aren't sure that it's from that sender and if it's not official. And in most cases, they probably won't send you a text messages, so be mindful of that too.
And this goes back to scammers generally preying on your emotions. As you can see, they said that your account is suspended. So the first reaction would be shock or maybe even fear. So just make sure like you have a cool head like when you see these type of messages, and because they're most likely not going to be true, especially they come through a text message.
So another popular branch of phishing is vishing. This is when the phishers gain confidential information through voice calls. Always be suspicious of caller IDs that do not look familiar. If they ask for personal information, ask them to identify themselves and identify where they work in order to determine if they're legitimate. Most likely, they won't have answers to your questions, so always be sure to ask the questions before you decide that it's legitimate. Now that we have covered social engineering techniques and malwares, let's see how to prevent malwares. One important way to prevent malwares is to use antivirus softwares. This software detects and destroys any computer virus. However, there are scammers that claim antivirus software, so make sure to download it from a reliable source such as Norton or McAfee. So on the slide, there are free antivirus options and paid antivirus options. So yeah, make sure to download a reliable and a popular antivirus software and not from a sketchy website. Yeah, that's a good way to see if the call is real. To ask where the number to call. Yeah.
Yeah, once a scammer's victim starts asking a lot of questions, the scammer does not tend to not have any answers for that. So the quickest thing for them to do is to end the call. Otherwise, they might get in trouble with any authority or something. So that's their easiest way to get out of any situation like that. So it's always good to keep on pestering them with questions in order to make sure that they're legitimate.
They probably won't know the answer to the questions either way. So, security updates is another important method in defending against malwares. Security updates install important software updates and patches that are necessary to defend and safeguard your computer. Hackers often target users who are behind their software updates since there are more loopholes in their security. One efficient way to get the security update installed is to automatically schedule it on your device to scan for updates. Some antivirus softwares also remind you to have security updates installed, and your computer also gives you regular updates if you haven't downloaded your security update yet. So that's also another way to make sure you get on top of your security updates, because it's extremely important to download them. A virtual private network, VPN, is also a useful tool. This tool allows you to encrypt your internet traffic and protects your online identity so hackers have a harder time hacking when you access the internet. This is definitely advisable in public places so you can establish a secure but private connection with the internet. Here are some nice examples of VPN, like the previous slide. Free options include Proton VPN, TunnelBear, WinScript, and paid options include NordVPN, ExpressVPN, and iVPN.
So this connects back to using Wi-Fi in public places. Like for example, if you're in an airport and maybe you really have to connect to the public Wi-Fi, you should definitely try a VPN out, because even though it might not seem like it's doing anything, this is encrypting your traffic so that it's harder for the hackers to identify what you're doing on the public Wi-Fi, and this kind of masks your internet presence. Thank you for the compliment.
Thank you. We hope you learned something from our presentation. In this module, we have talked about malware and social engineering techniques like phishing and smishing. We have also talked about malware prevention strategies like downloading antivirus softwares and updating your device for security fixes. Following these strategies will go a long way in defending your computer against malwares.
So does anyone have any questions or comments about lesson 2? Yes, we can use VPN on cell phone. There are NordVPN apps and other VPNs that have applications which you can download on your cell phone as well. And it is definitely really user friendly to get a VPN on your cell phone and use it. So that is an option as well, and also highly recommended as a lot of people tend to browse in public Wi-Fi.
Are there any other questions or comments? Oh. Phishing is basically done through like a email that that a hacker would send. So are you talking about phishing?
Okay, so we have covered phishing, and there's also spear phishing. So a nice way to think about this is like when you're phishing and when you use a spear, it tends to go towards one target. So that's similar to what spear phishing is. It's really going towards one target, and that email, which is the same way as phishing, which is the same method phishing uses, that email will hold a lot of information that might be of interest to the victim. So that's the main differentiation between spear phishing and phishing. Phishing might be like a spam and mass email, but spear phishing is well crafted towards one person or one victim.
Yeah, in both cases, just make sure to check the email sender and to make sure it's all legitimate. Like all the rules still apply for spear phishing in the same case.
Yeah, no problem. DuckDuckGo as a browser. So I have not used DuckDuckGo myself, but I do think it is reputable. So as long as it is a reputable browser, then I think it would be recommended to use it. But like using a web browser that not many other people use, or that is not like well accredited, would not be recommended. So DuckDuckGo would be good as a browser.
If you have the ability to use Chrome or like Edge or Internet Explorer, it's better to use that, but DuckDuckGo is still okay.
So if there are no more questions or comments, we'll now move on to another short quiz on Module 2.
What is not an example of malware? Rogue security software, spyware, grandparent scam, or adware? Correct. C is correct. The grandparent scam is the type of scam that we will discuss later in this presentation, but the other three are a type of malware. How does phishing work? A person tries to steal your wallet, an email pretends to be from a trustworthy person and tries to make you download malware, a process that takes patience and a fishing rod with bait as well in order to acquire underwater targets, a complicated hacking maneuver that can bypass all of your firewall and security protection to steal your data. B is correct. An email pretends to be from a trustworthy person and tries to make you download malware. Like we have said before, make sure to check where the email is sent from and the email sender, and make sure to check the resolution and typos in the email that can identify as a phishing.
And also, option D really highlights a good point about phishing, a complicated hacking maneuver. So phishing is not a complicated hacking maneuver, and I think most of us, when we imagine like getting our data stolen, it's mostly with like a person in a dark room, maybe like grinding over a computer, like hacking. But phishing is a really easy way to get your data, and you can also easily prevent it. Um, so just keep in mind that phishing is really easy to prevent. And C is also not the correct answer as well.
We will now move on to Module 3, Internet Scams and Frauds.
There's no doubt that the internet brims with spamming, scamming, and identity fraud. Having someone wipe out your hard drive or bank account has never been easier, and the tools for committing electronic mischief on your enemies are widely accessible. This quote not only communicates that the internet and society today has several scams, but also communicates that with all the cheap tools available, it is extremely easy for scammers to scam you. Because of this, we need to make sure that we don't get caught in these scams. So let's take a look at some of the broad sources of scams. So all these scams are acting as someone, acting as government agencies, financial institutions, insurance providers, or online/phone service that claim to be service providers. So they're all acting as someone that you might be dependent on, like for a service or for money or for insurance. And as we learned in the previous module, these scams mainly happen through phishing, vishing, and smishing. So let's talk more in detail about many popular scams that have happened in the past. The Internal Revenue Service, or for short IRS, scam calls users to ask for bank information, which is how they hack your bank account. For example, they might call your number and start out by saying, "We are the IRS and we need your bank account information." In this scenario, do not respond and cut the call. Let's have a couple of points to remember whenever we encounter this scenario. One, The IRS does not call users and only physically mails them. So that means that no digital communication is valid. 2. Even with these physical mails, double check with the website and look for any inconsistencies, as we discussed in the previous module. All in all, check the validity of any IRS communications and make sure to report any IRS scams. When contacted by a supposedly trustworthy IRS agent, always keep your cool and first check the validity. Just remember that the IRS cannot revoke your driver's license, business license, or immigration status, and you have the right to question or appeal whatever the IRS claims. For IRS scams, please report this to 1-800-366-4484 and forward emails to phishing@irs.gov. We also have grandparent scams to keep in mind. So these scammers create stories that take advantage of grandparents' fears and impersonate their children or grandchildren, therefore resulting in the grandparents to send money to the scammer. For example, a scammer may call you and say, "Please help me. I got into a car crash and I need $10,000. In this situation, make sure to be calm and trust your instincts. The scammer may also have looked into your social media page for any relevant relatives to prove your relationship to you. For example, a scammer might say, "Please help me, granddad," and then even if you ask um, a question that only family members might know, they may have information from your social media page that may make it easier for them to respond to that question. So always just make sure that you don't ask any question to them that may have the answer on your social media page, and make sure to be calm and trust your instincts. If that is the case, call any other trusted relative to validate if the emergency is real, because chances are, if an actual emergency happened, the person in need will probably not call their grandparents first. So always make sure you call any relatives if you're really suspicious and if that actually might be true. Again, stay calm and evaluate the situation. Scammers will try to use your emotions against you and try to upset or distract you, so always just be alert. So now let's talk about lottery and survey scams. So these scams generally are in the format of something like, "Congratulations, you may receive up to $400,000 in cash." Just remember that you will never win a lottery you have never signed up for, so make sure you exit the call and don't share any of your PII. Additionally, never click on suspicious links that give you prizes, and do not type any of your information on untrustworthy websites. So, question, what privacy settings do you recommend? So I'm assuming that it is for social media platforms. That will be covered in a module that's coming up. So I'll answer that question in that module. So tech support scams. So make sure you download reliable antivirus softwares and not softwares that are suspicious. If you do not download reliable softwares, they may have phony tech support calls or pop-ups claiming your computer has security issues. And this again might instill panic in you. So a common trend with all of these scams are that they all use emotion. An example of this might be if you receive a notice saying that your computer has been infected with a certain type of malware, and to get rid of this malware, it might ask you to click on a certain link. However, what is unknown to you is that this link is embedded with a malicious program that will allow hackers to remote access to your computer for ransomware. Remember that tech support will never contact you unless you contacted them first. So charity scams are pretty similar to what we've been talking about. They now use emotions like sympathy to take advantage of kind-hearted people by asking them to donate to charity or organizations. If that is the case, just make sure that the charity or organization you're donating to is valid and legitimate before you donate. So now let's talk about identity theft. So identity thieves take the identity of people who are unaware and use it to commit crimes. So to prevent identity thefts from happening, it all really roots down to PII because that is basically the foundation for identity theft. And if you ever come across identity theft, make sure that you report it to the Federal Trade Commissions or the FTC and report it to www.identitytheft.gov for more resources. So what can we conclude from this module? There are several types of scams: charity, tech support, grandparent, lottery, IRS. A common trend, again, is that scammers will use your emotions against you. So always make sure to stay calm and make sure that any correspondence you get is valid before taking next steps. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this module? Okay. So now let's take a look at some scenarios. So scenario 1. Joe, a 78-year-old man, gets a call from an anonymous number. He picks it up and instantly hears the following.
It's me, Grandpa. I got in a car crash and I need $20,000 for hospital expenses. Please transfer it to my account, says bank account information. I need it right now.
In this situation, Joe should not panic, no matter how dire the situation might be. Joe should ask the caller's name. It is probable that the scammer might not even know the name of the person they're trying to impersonate, especially if it's not on social media. Joe should drop the call and contact his grandson and ask other family members if the grandson did not pick the call up. And another key detail is that with relatives, the numbers are generally saved. So if you're receiving an unfamiliar number and they claim to be your grandson, it will most likely not be your grandson because that number is not saved. And if your actual grandchildren is calling you, then that number will show up as the name. So Joe has successfully avoided a grandparent scam. Relieved, he goes back to sleep. The next morning, he hears a voicemail on his phone. This is the IRS.
This is the IRS. This is urgent. We need to call you right now.
Joe forgets that the IRS does not leave voicemails and do not initiate contact through digital communications, and he calls the number back.
We need your bank account information in order to validate that you have paid your taxes. You must give it to us immediately or you may be arrested.
So in this situation again, Joe should not panic. Scammers intentionally use fear against victims. Joe finally remembers that IRS never contacts through digital communications, and he instantly drops the call. Joe reports the scam to 1-800-366-4484. So we have now covered 3 modules: Introduction to Cybersecurity, Common Internet Threats, and Internet Scams and Fraud.
We will now begin Module 4, Social Media Safety and Awareness. Security is a big concern on the social web. People are going to destroy social media just like they are going to breach data in other areas. This quote shows that social media is also a tool people can use to hack and or gain your PII. Let's look at a few techniques to prevent this. Social media sites include and are not limited to YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Social media sites have general features such as a gear icon that allows you to make changes to your account, a lock icon that indicates your privacy status and allows you to modify your safety and security, and finally, a question mark icon for support and help. These icons will allow you to maintain your security. So tying back to the question asked before, so here are some tips for the usage of social media. Do not overshare. This basically means to keep your sensitive information private and not to publicize it. Another important tip is to be careful about who can access your contacts and to check suspicious messages from your contacts.
And one technical thing you can do with social media applications is that you should not post your location. So generally, on at least on iPhones, it'll have an option for you to disable location services. So that is always the recommended option to do. So that is one thing you can definitely do in order to prevent any social media scams or to make your social media account more secure.
Some more tips include be careful with clickbaits, which are links that may lead to malware. These links may look innocent, but can have malware in it. Also, be aware of scams that provoke your emotions into giving money or donating. Such scams can include the sick baby hoax, which basically posts pictures of disabled or sick babies to manipulate people into donating. It is a good deed to donate, but always validate the sources and make sure they are legitimate. If perhaps you do find scams, make sure to report them. Most importantly, make sure you comment and post carefully and keep in mind personal comments that may affect you. Finally, do not accept friend requests from strangers and make sure you are aware of the person you are accepting as a friend on social media. So, what can we conclude from this module? Twitter and other social media is a great way for finding information, but it's also important to be cautious of putting your PII on the platform and allowing scammers to get to your information. So make sure to use the tips that were discussed before to keep that from happening. Are there any questions or comments? Let's move on to Module 5, Password Management.
So this is our last module, and it will be on password management. And it'll be all about creating safe passwords and securing your online presence. Treat your password like your toothbrush. Don't let anybody else use it and get a new one every 6 months. So this quote, while slightly humorous, represents an everyday life analogy, and as we will show in this lesson, it is one of the core fundamentals of password management. A password is a string of characters used to verify the identity of a user during the authentication process. Creating a password will limit access to your data and applications to only those who know the password. However, there are weak passwords and strong passwords, and they really do make a difference. So let's take a look at the difference. Longer is always going to make the password stronger. So even though there A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L is not that secure because of a lack of complexity, it is always going to be more complex and more secure than A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So even just adding those two characters is going to help a lot. Complex is also another factor in making a strong password. A variety of characters like uppercase, numbers, lowercase, symbols. So maybe in the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, you can sprinkle in some exclamation marks and put in some capital, some uppercases, and this will make your password much better. And sometimes maybe you don't remember your passwords very easily, and maybe a jumble of characters won't stick to your mind very easily. So this is where passphrases are useful. With passphrase, you can convert the passphrase like "where are my keys at" to something that's shorter but a lot more complex, as you can see on the slide. So here, the E was taken out, so it's capital W, lowercase h, capital R, MI, and then the @ symbol. Like so, as you can see, it's a lot more complex and it's a lot more random, the password, than a straight uniform alphabetic like word. And this is a really good graphic that shows weak passwords versus strong passwords from a hacker's point of view. So as you can see, with a really small length of 7 characters, the password takes 0.29 milliseconds to crack. So it's really easy for a hacker to crack that. But then as you can see, the longer the password is, the more time it'll take for a hacker to crack. And you can also see that even adding that 1 character exponentially increases that time for a hacker to hack the password. So it goes from 0.29 milliseconds all the way to 2 centuries just by adding 5 characters to a password. And this is also not factoring in complexity. So it is always better to use longer passwords up at least 10 characters. So when should you change your passwords? So like the toothbrush examples, 6 to 12 months is a pretty good time frame, at least for personal use. And sometimes for companies, they may have different policies like 30 or 90 days. So just make sure that you stick to that policy and stick to that time frame. And frequently change your password, although you should not change it too much, otherwise you might forget. So on mobile devices, there are other forms of verification of authentication, such as securing it with a PIN number, 4 or 6 digit, adding a fingerprint, using facial recognition, adding a password, and adjusting the time before your screen automatically locks. So these are all really important aspects of securing your mobile devices. Adjusting the time before your screen automatically locks is really important. For example, maybe you're using your phone, you leave it out, and you forgot to turn the phone off, right? So there is an option to make sure that the phone is only active for 30 seconds and then it'll automatically turn off. So make sure you enable that. And you can always disable it if you have to do something with your phone. And then there's also two-factor or multi-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication is also a secure way to lock your account to important accounts such as your Gmail account. Two-factor authentication is important because it provides a double or multi-layer of defense for your account. It generates and sends you a PIN through text messages or any form of communication, such as your Gmail app. So make sure that you and only you are logging into your account. Again, an example of this is a two-way authentication or Gmail account. After putting in your password, it generates a PIN and sends it to your text messages or your Gmail app so that you and only you are logging in.
Yeah, that is a good example of making the password based on the website. It is, yeah, as we will discuss later, it's always good to have different passwords for different accounts. And yeah, that's a good way to create passwords.
Yeah. So like maybe for Facebook, your password might contain that passphrase, but adding in complex symbols like the @ for A or 3 for E will really help make that password more complex. Because, and if you're thinking about it from like a hacker point of view, a complex password generally means that there's more possibilities for those characters. So maybe if a hacker knows that you only have alphabets in your passwords, there's only going to be 26 times 26 times to the power of how many characters your password is. But maybe if there's numbers or symbols, it drastically expands the possibilities of what your password might be. So that's why complexity is really important for passwords. So password management services. So these include LastPass, Dashlane, 1Password. So these store your login information, and they're really useful if you have difficulty in remembering long and complex passwords from multiple websites. I personally do not use password management services, um, but if I were to use one, it would definitely be a really reputable and secure one because is you're going to be putting your password in for a website. So if it's not reputable at all, or if it's a scam password management service, then they pretty much have access to all of your credentials. So always make sure that you're investing in a secure and safe password management service. So how can you tell if your account is compromised? One of your accounts may have been compromised if you have trouble logging in, if you get an email or text about suspicious activity, or if your friends and family receive spam content from you. So getting an email or text about suspicious activity, this again kind of links back to getting a text about a scam. So generally these type of emails or texts are a lot more formal and are a lot more uniform. So just always make sure you can tell based on the email or text whether or not it's from the authentic source.
Personally, I have gotten spam messages from my family members before, and what you do in that situation is you basically tell them so they can check that out and figure it out, so more people don't get spam messages from them. So yeah.
So what can we conclude from this module? Setting up a strong password is the first step in securing your account. So make sure your password is long and complex, but at the same time you can remember it. This way, no one can guess your password from other sources. Additionally, there are resources like Touch ID, facial recognition, and two-way authentication to help secure your account. Finally, make sure you use different passwords for different accounts, and practicing these best practices will make you one step closer to becoming more secure in the cyber world. Are there any questions or comments about this module? Okay, great. Let's take a look at some passwords and let's see if they're secure or not. So our first password is password 123. Is this a strong password or a weak password? What if your Facebook friends get a Facebook friend request appearing to be from you? So with Facebook requests, I'm not that familiar with Facebook requests, but if I was suspicious of getting a request from a friend, then and if they were an actual friend, then I would definitely validate that by texting them or contacting them through some other way, like maybe email or iMessages or something like that. I would validate that with them and to see if they're actually requesting to be friends on Facebook. Correct. Yeah, it is a weak password. Um, it is a solid uniform word with 123 in that order. So this is very easy for hackers to hack. So yeah, so caret $239 exclamation mark, and the caret has some symbols in there as well. So is it a strong or weak password? Correct. Yes, it is a strong password. It is more than 10 characters long with alphanumeric symbols, and that adds a lot of complexity. And it's recommended to have a password for more than 10 characters long. So yes, this is a strong password, and it's also pretty easy to remember. As you can see, it's like based off of a word, but it's not exactly that word. Solar winds 123. Strong or weak? Correct. This is a weak password. And actually, this password was used by a company and they got hacked from this password. SolarWinds is the company and they were hacked with this password. And another thing to note is that this password was used, I think, by a lower rank position in the company. So even when a hacker gets access to a low rank position, they can quickly scale up through the network and easily dominate the whole network. So it's always important to make sure that every single password you have is complex as much as you can make it. Congratulations. So you've finished Module 1 to 5, Introduction to Cybersecurity, Common Internet Threats, Internet Scams and Fraud, Social Media Safety, and Password Management. So that is the end of our workshop today. We have covered all 5 modules, and we hope you learned something and had fun in this workshop. Please do fill out the Google form by either scanning the QR code with your iPhone or using that link to fill that out. Thank you. Yeah, we hope to learn something.
Yeah, we hope you learned something. Thank you very much. And I know it's not the holidays yet, but just make sure you're very cautious over the holidays, like maybe next month, December, because crimes actually increase. And yeah, please be mindful of that. And thank you so much.
Yeah, with the shopping season, the crimes and the scams will increase. So,
Awesome.
no problem.
Thank you guys so much. I know every time I've seen this presentation a couple times, and I definitely learn something new every time. So thank you guys so much for presenting. It's also, super important and super relevant because this month is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we do want everyone to be prepared, especially during emergencies. It's really important that you know how to log in to a lot of the portals that you'll use, such as insurance companies. But you also want to make sure that if you're saving important documents, that you're also password protecting them so that in case anyone does get a hold of your USB, you want to make sure that your information is safe. Thanks again for joining us for our monthly webinar. And this was a great segue because, yes, holiday seasons are coming up. So next month, we're going to be talking about cooking safety. We'll talk about a little bit about weather and preparedness for the winter, and then also about online shopping and, just reminding everyone to be extra vigilant while they're doing that shopping. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next month.